Hello and welcome to Legislative Report. I'm Anthony Tezak. Joining me today is your state representative, Jamie Santora, to talk about an issue that has been discussed amongst Pennsylvanians for decades, property tax. Representative, welcome.
Hi, Anthony. Thanks for having me today.
When you're out in the district and you're talking to your constituents and you ask them, what's the most important issue that you want me to tackle as a representative, where does property tax fall?
Number one, you have 1 and 1A. We have property taxes and education funding. As you know, they go hand in hand. However, property taxes is a broader discussion because it affects everybody that owns a home in the township or municipality that I represent.
There's been a lot of effort in the past years to try and tackle this problem. However, we've never been able to get a bill signed by the governor. What's the biggest hurdles you face when looking at these proposals?
Well, Anthony, you have to take a look at the makeup of Pennsylvania. We've got many different types of areas. You've got a major city in the southeast in Philadelphia and its surrounding counties. Then you have a lot of farmlands and other areas that make up Pennsylvania. There's some areas that just don't have a property tax issue. We down in the southeast have a major property tax issue, and we've got to keep people in their homes, and this is affecting it. So we've got to do a thing called compromise, and that's what we did this last year with House Bill 504. We found a compromise that worked for both parties, for people in all different regions of the Commonwealth, and we were able to bring a bill out of the House and over to the Senate. Now it's still sitting there. However, it's progress. We've got to do that same compromise again next term and really get this thing filtered out and onto the governor's desk.
There's been a plan that's been discussed widely over the past years, and that would eliminate the property tax but replace it with a higher income tax and also an expansion of the sales tax onto some items that have never been taxed before. Is this a plan that's still being considered by the House?
They're looking at it, but they're looking at different options. You're referring to House Bill 76 and Senate Bill 76. My answer right now is I don't know if that bill can get across the table. I think a variation of that bill can get across the table, but it's a matter of, is it personal income tax? Is it sales tax? Is there different revenue sources that can play into it to make it successful?
What are some of the other proposals and ideas that the caucus has been discussing?
So just yesterday we had a meeting with the leader to talk about just that. What are the proposals that we can work on together to make it work? So some of the ideas is another variation of House Bill 504, which is a step towards elimination. In our district, for example, it would bring down property taxes in William Penn School District by over 50%, in Upper Darby School District by close to 47%, and in Haverford School District 39%. Those are significant reductions. If we can get a bill that is similar to 504, doesn't hurt the pocketbook that much in personal income tax, stays away from the sales tax, I think we got something that could be successful.
What are the chances of a property tax bill making it to the governor's desk in the next session?
Well, that's what some of the good news. We spoke to the leader yesterday. There was a small group of us together that are big advocates of this. And he's been in contact with the governor about it. And how do we get the governor on board to come out and advocate for it as well? So that to me is the key. If we can get the House, the Senate, and the governor all advocating for a bill, we will get there and we will get it done next session. I don't want to wait 2 years in the next session. We need to get it done sooner because we've got a real problem, and I keep coming back to seniors should be able to stay in their homes. Working families should stay in their homes. And young professionals should be able to afford to live in the neighborhoods they grew up in.
You mentioned earlier in the program that when you talk about property taxes, you automatically have to talk about education because they go hand in hand. Is there any concern that property tax reform or elimination could hurt funding for local school districts?
As I said earlier, it does go hand in hand. And one of the things that we've been working on up here in Harrisburg is to increase the education funding. Now, increasing that education funding stabilizes property taxes potentially, but it doesn't eliminate them. And that is something we need to work on. Now, from the standpoint of your question on can it hurt the school districts? Not if we appropriately fund school districts like we have been doing over the past several years. We have a basic education funding formula in place to make sure that school districts that were not getting the funding they needed are getting additional funding first. So that went into effect this past year, and it's a great step in the right direction. There's more that we have to do to assure that school districts will not get hurt as we take more of the burden at the state level and take it off the property tax owners.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the education funding formula, how it came together, and in your opinion, if it was a successful approach?
It was a successful approach. So the way it came together was there was a commission that was put together, and it was a bipartisan commission made up of both House and Senate and other leaders. And what they did was they went out and really did the homework. They looked at what needed to be done, and then they also looked at the other effect of it. If we've got to implement this thing, but over time. So we started with any new money would be run through this basic ed funding formula. Over time, I would like to see that turn into all money runs through the basic ed funding formula, but you can't hurt the districts that had been getting appropriate funding and reduce them down in order to help others at the same time. We've got to make sure that everybody's getting the funding that they need.
There was a plan that was talked about, and I believe it was a proposal that was put forth by Governor Wolf. However, when you looked at the plan, although property tax may have been either reduced or eliminated in some areas on a state level, there was no protection in there to ensure that the local school districts couldn't recreate the property tax.
Yeah.
When you're looking at these proposals, do you have that in the back of your mind to ensure that local districts can't, more or less
there
go
has to be a
rogue?
fair bounce, and that's how I look at it. And there's ways to do it. If we are providing the funding adequate that is needed to do everything that we're mandating, that's one thing. It's when we're not providing that, school districts have to have that backup plan, and we've got to give them that opportunity. But to go put, in turf fields and put in the latest technology, which is great. It's a great educational tool, and I'd love to see every district have it, but that has to be decided upon by the taxpayers. It can't be done on a whim. So those are the types of things we have to look at and make sure that the school districts are using it wisely. I'm very comfortable with the school districts in the 163rd because they do use their funds wisely. They are out using it for learning supports. They're out making sure that they've got the best educational tools for the schools. You come into some of our schools, they're very old schools, and they need updating. They're at that point in time, so they do need that funding. This year they approved doing new wiring for the computer systems. It's a necessary thing, and it probably should have been done a long time ago, but they're going to use today's technology. We have mandates out there. We pushed the Keystone exams back 2 years. That's not enough. In my opinion, I'm all about eliminating the Keystone exams, but if they are going to come back, they've got to have the technology, because if there are kids that are not successful in them, there's a program that they can do, but it's all internet-based. So if they don't have the technology to go with it, again, they're going to not be successful, and that's not right. They've got to be armed with the tools in order to educate today's student.
You had mentioned that one of the problems when tackling property tax is the diversity of the state, and you can really get a good look at that picture when you look at the bank accounts of some of these school districts. You have some school districts that have tens of thousands in the reserves, while not far away you have school districts that are just scraping by and trying to borrow money to meet bills. Is it right for these districts to be, when it comes to funds available, for that large of a gap?
So I think what you meant to say, some school districts have tens of millions of dollars, because that's the reality. Take a school district, so I've got Haverford School District, I've got Upper Darby School District side by side. Haverford is a smaller school district. They keep X amount of dollars in the reserve fund for a rainy day, emergency. Upper Darby does the same thing. Upper Darby School District's a much larger school district, so they need to have, I believe they have about $17 million after this year they'll have in that account. They need it. They lose a system in their high school, they could eat away at $2 to $5 million of it. A roof on their high school could be, a multi-million-dollar project, or any one of their schools. Again, large school district, you need to have the appropriate funds. Also, if you want to have borrowing power, be able to put bonds out there once in a while, you've got to have a certain amount of money in your reserve amounts, or you're not going to get that funding, which then will increase your taxes because your borrowing rates will go up. So there's a lot of formulas that go into it. But the ones that have, $50 million in it and 2,800 kids in the entire school district, there's an issue there. And then they're still getting 80% of their funding from the Commonwealth. That needs to be looked at.
And we only have about a minute left, but any final words on the property tax issue and the necessity to change the way we fund our schools? Yeah,
we've got to move it over. We've got to make it a state-level funding program. We've got to adequately fund all of our school districts across the Commonwealth. It's my number one goal. Besides education funding as a whole, property tax reform. It is impacting my area. I am not going to give up on it until we are successful, and I'm really hoping this next term brings us to that success. We really need to look at it this next session hard. We've got to do it early and get it on the governor's desk and signed into law.
All right, Representative Santora, thanks for spending some time with us, and good luck as you move forward and tackle this issue.
Great. Thank you, Anthony.
That's all the time we have for today's program. If you have questions or concerns about what you've just saw or any other state government-related matter, Representative Santora's contact information will be on the screen in just a moment. Thanks for watching, and please join us again next time for another edition of Legislative Report.